On Saturday, 20th July, Tayo was at the Black Asian Minority Ethnic Labour Party 2013 conference held at Unison Building, Euston, London. This year's conference was well attended by staunch members of BAME's followers that included Kit Vass, MP Sadiq Khan, MP Chuka Umuna, MP, and Councillor Tulip Sadiq. In his opening remarks, Kamaljit Jandu appreciated all in attendance and introduced newly appointed BAME executive.
Currently, which finishes on the 31st of July, the other BAME candidate on that list is Sanchia Lishlia. Can I? Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
Kamaljit rounded up reflecting on marginalization of ethnic minorities in our community.
It's 65 years since Martin Luther King said his speech about his dream. It's 50 years since Windrush. It's been 41 years since we had the influx of Asians from Uganda. And it's been 20 years since Stephen Lawrence was murdered. Now, many things have changed in that period, but equally more things need to change so that we generally have a post-racial society. We had the news this week in America.
2 BAME members were elected to represent the association at the oncoming Labour Annual Conference 2013 at Brighton.
At the Unite, no. The Labour Party Conference that will be taking place in Brighton this year. Patsy Cummins, stand up.
Kit Vass, MP, Chair of the Labour Party, Ethnic Minority Task Force, was first on the podium. It challenges all to embrace education as it concerns policies, look into inspired and motivating skills and other salient problems facing the Black Asian minority ethnic group in the UK.
Is really about policy. And that is the fight for representation at a local level and in Parliament and in the European Parliament. And I'm delighted to see so many Black and Asian candidates sitting in the European, sitting as candidates for the elections for the European Parliament. I'm confident that we will get one of our number in the top 3 in London. And the same will apply in the West Midlands. The same will probably apply in the North West. There are very few regions that do not have Black and Asian candidates standing. And what is essential is to make sure that we run, that we stand for things. And if we don't get the chance to be selected. But representation is important. The other key area is policy. Sitting around this room are people with such expertise in their subject that it is absolutely awesome. I know the first thing that is identifiable about all of us is the colour of our skins. But actually, the jobs that we're involved in all make a huge contribution to this country. And we're not consulted enough about policy. And one of the things that BAME Labour has started to do this under the leadership of Afzal, Colette, Kamaljit and June, is to start talking about policy. Go to a meeting of the National Policy Forum, and there are very few BAME members there. But look at the quality of the information and talent that we have. I'm going to give you 3 examples. In the health service, sitting on the BAME executive is someone like Niraj Patil, who is a doctor in A&E in London. I have to tell you, his hospitals are amongst the best performing, so we don't blame Niraj for any of the problems at A&E in the NHS. But imagine Niraj and people like Niraj, nurses, doctors, members of our community who can make a contribution to policy. What can be done to achieve that? Yes, representation is important, but discussing health policy is also important, and we have to have a say and an involvement in that. I can remember the last time we agreed a manifesto, just before the last election, and I fought very hard to get one word into the last Labour Party manifesto. That was the word diabetes. Because I'd only just been diagnosed with diabetes, and as we all know, diabetes affects our communities more than any other. But it still was a fight to get the word diabetes just into the manifesto. Cancer was in there, but not diabetes. And I was trying to explain how important that was policy-wise. A second example is education. For years, Diane Abbott, before she joined the good and the great as a member of the front bench of Ed Miliband's team, was holding conferences about the problems facing young black men in getting educational opportunities. Education, a key issue. How many teachers do we have in our communities? How many people that deal with the education sector? There's another opportunity for us to get involved in policy making. And the third and final area, in business and employment. And there is Joe Ackerman sitting at the back, a small businessman, not in terms of his height, of course, but he is actually a small businessman, who happens to be someone who has campaigned on the issue of business for many years. You'd think that small businessmen were all white if you look at government policy. Here is an opportunity for us to create employment for our communities by being involved in policy making. So when we approach the Labour Party, when we sit as equal members, which is what we are, this is the big change that's occurred over 30 years. 30 years ago, if you had a room in central London with so many black and Asian people sitting in it, people might think that there was a selection meeting going on for an inner city council seat, because we just don't seem to come out when there's a discussion on policy. But we have to discuss policy alongside representation, because let me be very clear to you, we are going to have a Labour government in 2 years' time. There is absolutely no way that the Tory Liberal coalition is going to be re-elected. And we are sitting in the presence of people who are going to be in a Labour cabinet. One of the great achievements of Ed Miliband is the fact that he has transformed the way in which we do our politics as far as race is concerned. He appoints people to his front bench on the basis of their merit. Just after he was elected leader, and after he finished his appointments, I rang him up and I said, do you know you've got a third of all the BAME MPs are in your shadow government? And do you know you've got 2 BAME people sitting in 2 of the best jobs in your shadow government? Justice and business. And do you know what that means for all of us? And his reply to me was, well, actually, I didn't realise that because I appointed them because of their merit. Now, we need to make sure that we get ourselves together and in order, because people like Sadiq Khan are going to be sitting in a British cabinet, and when he sits there, frankly, he's not going to be able to take all our calls. I'd be very grateful if he took my call. And it's worth getting his phone number now, because if he's Secretary of State for Justice, then he controls all the judges, as you know. So it's always good to know when you need a judge. But Sadiq and people like that will be in government, okay? Sitting around the cabinet table with Ed Miliband. So we need to be prepared, not to complain then, but to be involved now. People like Sunny, with their experience in business, and other people sitting around this room. Let me say this finally. Ed talks about opening up the party and the need for change. He's absolutely right. He started a huge debate with the trade union movement. I think this is good that he's done this, because we are part of the trade union movement, and the trade union movement is part of us. I could never have got elected but for the financial support of Unison when I was selected in my Tory seat in 1987. It was the Unison regional organiser who came and said, we will fund your campaign and we will help get you elected. And I couldn't have got here without Unison. So this is a relationship of equals. But this gives us an opportunity in opening up the party to be involved like never before. He is a great leader, and he's going to be a great Prime Minister. We have moved from the margins into the mainstream. Let's take our responsibility and let's act together to return Ed Miliband as the Prime Minister and a Labour government again. Thank you.
Councillor Tulip Sadiq, PPC for Amstead and Cubon, CLP, was eloquent and passionate in her speech. She advised individuals to pursue their dreams without hindrance, such as creed, color, race, or sex.
You will always have a small group of people who will try and persuade you not to stand. Yes. Don't listen to them. Please don't listen to them. I won convincingly. I was up against two formidable opponents, a former special advisor, 15 years older than me, a former journalist, 10 years older than me, and I still won. So do not listen to the people who tell you not to stand, because you've got to stand for seats, otherwise you won't win them. Let me tell you some of the things that were said. I'm too short to be an MP. That was the first thing. Just look at Sadiq, come on. I was too young. Well, guess what? I'm older than when Chuka got into Parliament, so I'm not too young. For some people, I was too Muslim. For other people, I wasn't Muslim enough. So you're never going to please anyone. People dragged in my family. People talked about my famous aunt. Everything comes out in the wash. People didn't like the fact that I was married to someone called Chris. All of this doesn't matter, okay? But at the end of the day, you've got to prove that you have a track record in local campaigning. This is the home seat where I grew up, where I've been a councillor, where I've been campaigning for Labour for 15 years, where I've been a councillor, a cabinet member, I worked on policy, I saved the libraries. These are the things I kept repeating. And again, the small group of people circulating vicious emails, writing to the local press, I won this election against the odds. But if I had let those group of people put me off, I wouldn't be here today. So please don't let those people off. Go and speak to the majority, talk about your policy ideas, get support from your local party, get support from people who knew you. People kept saying to me, why are you standing in Hampton Kilburn? It's a Jewish area, they won't elect you. The main person working on my campaign was Ezra Cohen. Okay? So it doesn't matter if it's a Jewish area, people would vote for me because my views on Israel-Palestine were the right views. That's what people were interested in, not my Muslim surname. What I will tell you is that it really helped having a supportive mother in the audience today. So that really helped. People who I really had helping me were actually Asian men, funnily enough. So the three men on this platform, Kamalji, really helped me with the unions. Keith sent me lots of supportive texts. Keith and Sadiq have to be a bit careful because they are MPs and you can't really look like you're favouring someone. So they did text me lots of encouragement and support and gave me advice when I asked for it. So don't be scared to ask for advice. They will come and help you. Both Keith and Sadiq were role models for me while I was going for this election. You know, Sadiq's been the MP for Tooting, the area in which he grew up, where his beautiful daughters go to local school. His father drove the bus there. He's a local boy and he stood there since he was 2005. And now he's a Shadow Lord Chancellor, Shadow Justice Secretary, he's got too many titles, and Shadow Minister for London. But I just want to tell you something quick. I've made the mistake of getting married during this election as well, so don't do that in the future. But one day, when I was getting my hair done for my wedding, my hairdresser asked me what I do. And I said, oh, I work in politics. And he said, do you know Sadiq Khan? And I said, actually, I do. And all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. I got hot chocolate came by, a sandwich appeared, there was an extra mirror behind me. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I was just enjoying it. And he said to me, my hairdresser said to me, if it wasn't for Sadiq fighting for me as a solicitor back in the day, I wouldn't be in this job. I wouldn't have the life I had, and I wouldn't have this hairdressers. And it made me think that Sadiq didn't start fighting for people since 2005. Sadiq's been fighting for people all his life.
The morning section was drawn to an end with Sadiq Khan, MP, Shadow Justice Secretary, Shadow Lord Chancellor, and Shadow Minister for London.
I want to meet the people who confuse me with Tudor. But it's my pleasure to be here. When Kamaljit said to me he wanted me to come and address a meeting of his friends and family, that's why I didn't wear a tie, Kamaljit. I thought it's good to be here. I feel underdressing Keith and Kamaljit looking so dapper on the stage, and Tudor as well. There are a number of ways to do this speech, and I thought very carefully about how to do this speech. And actually, on the one level, there's a huge source of optimism that I'll talk about shortly. But as Keith said, there's also lots of challenges, and I'll try and be honest and candid with you about the challenges we face. But I want to say a couple of things about Tudor, who just spoke and warmly introduced me a moment ago. Because Tudor has been through a very tough selection battle. And during the discussion, in time for the discussion, it's really important she shares with me some of the challenges she faced. And to be frank, Kamaljit, Keith and myself have all been through tough battles to get to where we are, whereby Kamaljit is on the verge of being chosen, hopefully in a high place to go on the London MEPs for this. And Sanchez in the audience as well, a good friend who hopefully will do well as well. But all of us have stories to tell, and Keith as well. And we'll touch upon part of that during the morning, I hope. There are now a number of BAME parliamentary candidates for our party. Clive Lewis in Norwich, Thangam Debonair in Bristol West, Bin Joshi in Colne Valley, Joshi Channon in Kingswood, Sarah Owen in Hastings, and Rebecca Blake in Greenwich. That is a big number, bearing in mind the general election is still 22 months away. Many seats still to come, and we'll talk about that as well. We're in a position whereby, as Keith said, 2 members of the Shadow Cabinet are from BAME heritage. In nearly all the regions where we'll be selecting our European candidates, in East Midlands, in Eastern, in North West, in South East, in South West, in West Midland, in Yorkshire, Humber, and in Scotland, we've got very good BAME candidates on the slates. And one of the reasons is because Keith and myself have been arguing in those sort of seats where you can decide the panel. It's very important we have a panel that represents the society we seek to represent. The problem is, it's members that choose where you are on that panel that brings in a whole host of challenges we'll talk about during the discussion that we made this morning. We're also at a position under Kamaljit's chairmanship where we have 31 friends of groups of Labour. Just think about that. Really strong position. As Keith said, 6%, 16 Labour MPs, 6% of the Parliamentary Labour Party is Labour. But bear this in mind, in 2010, we had second worst results in Labour's history. Only 29% of the British public voted Labour, compared to 28% in 1983. So the second worst result in our history, yet 12.5% of the new intake in 2010 was BAME. So with very bad results nationally, we still managed to get a fantastic 12.5% of our new intake being BAMEs. And for the first time ever, we have Asian women elected to Parliament, Asian Muslim women as well. And since then, we've had, in a by-election, we were told Asians and blacks are unpopular, they lose votes. Well, Seema Malhotra won her seat in a by-election, which just debunks that theory as well. And actually, our membership's in a good position as well. Since Ed became leader, 70,000 people have joined the party. It's difficult to work out who is BAME because only recently we started to self-define, but 12.6% of our membership, at least 12.6%, is BAME, which is a source of pride. I think we can do even better. Now, it's worth just asking the question, why is it so important for us to have proper BAME representation in our party? Well, the short answer is because we will make a better government if we have representation that represents the society we seek to represent. But also, it's rewarded the communities who vote Labour. At the last general election, 68% of BAME citizens voted Labour. It's a huge number. 16% voted Tory and only 14% Lib Dem. And they must vote for us for a reason. We can't take it for granted. Complacency is something we all need to worry about. That's why many of us, Keith and myself on the NEC, have fought for a future candidates programme that mentors, that trains, that upskills potential candidates so that you have the skills that, frankly speaking, the nephews of MPs, the cousins of MPs, the sons of academics have that we haven't got. And we need those skills, because otherwise we will have a situation where you come to selection and you'll be psyched out. I mean, some of the stories Tulip tells are true. I'm just pleased that I was one of those that said, you've got to stand for Hampstead and Kilburn when she was being told that she would embarrass herself, that she would make enemies, that she was foolish for doing so. And all of us has that hinterland, those friends that Tulip had, and it's really important that the Future Candidates Programme helps our future MPs. And one of the things I managed to negotiate was another Future Candidates Programme. The deadline closed last week, and we'll try and ensure as many BAME are on those Future Candidates Programme. But actually, the centrepiece of my few words today is this. We need to change the DNA of politics. We need to change the DNA of politics. And what do I mean? Look, it's okay having Keith as the chair of a select committee. It's very, very important. Or to have me in the shadow cabinet, or Kamaljic and Sasha as members of the European Parliament. But it's not just about representation. We've got to understand what the DNA of politics means. What the DNA of politics means is we need more BAME people working for think tanks. We need to be doing the thinking and advising policies that help not just mainstream communities.
Question and answer section. Enable participants to ask questions.
My name is Qayyum Mannan. I'm from Ilford South. I wanted to ask, in regard to what Mr. Khan said about basically changing the DNA of politics, when I've tried vehemently to get more younger BAME members involved in the Labour politics, involved in politics in general, one of the things that keeps on coming back in terms of Labour specifically is that what do they do for us? Why should we vote for them? Why should we get involved? Why should we even take part in the party political process? As you know, politics has become more of an individual issue, single issue thing nowadays. I wanted to ask, what advice can you give in actually telling people the benefits of politics and telling people my age, BAME people my age, I'm talking about 21, I'm not that young, about what Labour can offer?
Okay, thanks very much. And lady in the front here, did you have a question? Yep.
Thank you very much. Just want to congratulate you, Tulip. It's so wonderful. I'm following you on Facebook. I'm Shirley Masson from Stevenage. I've tried to be a parliamentary candidate. I was PTC candidate for Hertfordshire last year. Done various things. Deputy Mayor in Stevenage right now. Only the second BME Mayor next year, hopefully. One question. It's about this. I mean, I am so positive about this. Whatever experience I can give to help people, I want to do. But there is a little problem in selecting when you're trying to get your colleagues to select you. And I've noticed it in the European elections just recently. When I stood as a European candidate last time, it's cost me an awful lot of money. A lot of people don't realise when you're a candidate, when you're trying to be selected by your members, it costs a lot of money. And I thought at the end of the last Europeans that somebody was going to review or put a ceiling on the amount of money that can be spent on something like that. And I've watched it in Eastern Region just recently, that, and I'm not disrespecting the unions at all, but, there's a huge difference between the kind of literature that's going out for one person and for the others who don't realise how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take them to pay it back. And, I just think that there should be some kind of ceiling so it makes it fairer for everybody who's trying to be selected.
Okay,
I'm going to ask you to look into that, please.
My name is Ogo. I'm from Bolton South East CLP. I've been here for a while, then I've listened to everybody's comments, and there is one fact that keeps reoccurring. How do we involve the BAME communities? For example, if you go to the doorstep, what message you give to a BAME person that the Labour is doing for them, which is like what you just mentioned. So I'm thinking of a suggestion. Now that we are all here and we all represent the various CLPs, why don't we do something like, more like a mini research, whereby we go to our various constituencies and set up like a questionnaire just to have a response of what really affects them. You understand? Their fears of being members and what they really want the party to do for them. That one. Then, so with that one, we'll be able to come out as a party, like a charter, say, okay, we want to do this for you. So I think through that.
Can you, let me give you a simple example and a long example about why younger members of the BAME community should get involved. The short answer is politicians serve those who vote. Now, those aged between 18 and 24, 34% vote. Those aged above 55, 70% vote. So it's no coincidence that those aged above 60 have a free bus pass all around the country, and those below 16 only do in London. And because if politicians have an hour spare and they've got a choice to go to an old person's home or to go to a sixth form college, they'll go to the old person's home because they vote. So the short answer is, if you don't vote, other people will. And politicians will do priorities at their priorities and not yours. The longer answer is, actually, if you look at recent history, all the good things that have happened have been by politics. Some of the bad things as well, by the way. So it was politicians who decided to set up the NHS, politicians who in the end gave independence to Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka. It was politicians who cashed the minimum wage and all the rest of it. Also politicians who went to war in Iraq and all the other things. So we do bad things as well. There's an alternative. I mean, there's a famous quote from Churchill about, until we find something better, politics than we have. And all I'd say to...
The afternoon section commenced with Chuka Omuna, MP, Shadow Secretary of State for Business, Innovation and Skills. Chuka, from business perspective, advised Hall to be business oriented. He drew analogy from Nigerian society, where small scale business have helped improve individuals and the country economy.
There has been a lot of drama and reportage around our party over the last 2 to 3 weeks, not for good reasons. And I think at moments like this, you have to take a step back and always remember why we do what we do and why we are all here. Because in and amongst all the soap opera that you see in Westminster politics, sometimes the real reason we do what we do gets lost. And for me, and this will be the case for everyone in this room, as ever, it starts with your parents. And my father arrived in this country from Nigeria. Got any Nigerians in the room? Yeah! Very pleased to see Nigerians. But he arrived here in the mid-1960s, carrying, he arrived at Liverpool, had been on the boat for a month, very seasick, doesn't swim, wasn't happy about that. And, he had no money. And to get to London where he was going to find lodgings, he borrowed some money from a stranger in Liverpool and made his way down here. And by the time he passed away, when I was quite young, he was running a very thriving, successful import-export business. He was a classic entrepreneur. And, that story is repeated in this room. not least because we just weren't given the opportunities that other people had open to them long before I was born, but in the 60s and 70s it was hard. It was hard for our parents, and that's why there is this great entrepreneurial tradition in and amongst all our diverse communities, because if people weren't going to help us, we were going to sort it out ourselves. And that's what happened. But despite that, despite the fact that he was that classic entrepreneur, and people have seen historically the Tories as being the party of business, which I think, by the way, is a load of rubbish, but he loved the Labour Party. Harold Wilson was my dad's hero. I didn't even know what Harold Wilson was about, actually, when I was growing up. That's shameful for me to say it. But he used to bang on about Harold Wilson all the time. And the fact is, despite the fact he did very well, he saw, through the equalities legislation that we introduced in the 60s and the 70s, how this party was determined that he should be able to go on and achieve his dreams, and no one should be able to stand in the way of that. But we were actually going to do something about that. And the reason we as a party, and let's not pretend that we haven't had problems with racism in our party over the years, historically we have, but essentially we implemented these things because we believe by the strength of our common endeavour we achieve more than we do alone. And that is why you are all here. That is why we are members of this historic, precious and sacred party that we are a part of. And I think you've always got to remember that, because there's so much nonsense. There's even more with all the social media, Twitter, Facebook, all this blog business. You can get lost, but that is why we do what we do. And every day I get up in the morning, that is what I think about, because otherwise you can lose your way. Now, clearly, in the short term right now, we've got a heavy situation in all of our different communities. I was with a minister, I shared a platform with the trade minister 3 weeks ago. I invited him to come to Lambeth, because I thought, well, we all want to see our small businesses exporting more, and it is ridiculous we don't make more use of the diaspora links that we have in so many different ways. Particularly, you look what's happening in Africa at the moment. 7 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world at the moment are African. But we are not exploiting the opportunities there enough. Though mind you, actually, when I did a reception in the High Commission in Accra and had lots of constituents come and say to me, yeah, I live above the Tesco's in Stratford. I was like, oh. But anyway, the point is, I kind of lost my way there. We are in a very heavy situation anyway, so I'm sharing the platform with the trade minister. I can't believe the kind of blasé, casual way he said this. He said, oh yes, well, the economy's been flatlining for the last few months, certainly maybe the last couple of years. And I thought, well, you're a minister. The way you're just saying the casually, economy flatlining, if a patient is in intensive care and they're flatlining, they're not in a good situation. You're not in a good situation if you're flatlining. And the result of that is that we've got over 2.5 million people out of work, including almost 1 million young people, because of the ridiculous economic strategy that this government was intent on pursuing. So instead of doing what the 44th President of the United States was doing, which was allowing growth to set in before you go around chopping and cutting everything with the poles, they went hell for leather, cutting everything, choking off growth, which has meant that we're in the situation that we are, with so many people out of work. And the thing about this is it's so self-defeating. Because if you've got 2.5 million people out of work, that's 2.5 million people who are having to pay benefit to, 2.5 million people who are not paying income tax, 2.5 million people who aren't spending money in our businesses, who then aren't paying corporation tax as a result. A ridiculous strategy, an absolutely ridiculous strategy. And it's our people, it's people in our different diverse communities who have suffered most from that. Most from that. It is outrageous, the levels of employment among some particularly black boys in this country. It is a disgrace. It is a scar on our nation, what is happening at the moment. So no government minister should come on a platform with me and be casual about what's happening, because we see the results of that in all of our communities up and down this country. Outrageous. So that is the situation that we find ourselves in. And what is their solution to this? What is their solution to the current thing? Well, first of all, they say that, I was talking about the equalities legislation, the employment rights legislation that ensures that all of our people, all of us can actually go to work safe and secure in the knowledge that we will be treated fairly and the law is there to back us up. They want to run a coach and horses through all of that. Because they say the reason that the economy isn't growing is because of you, because of the rights that you have at work. What an utter load of nonsense. That's the first thing they say. Secondly, they say that we should just deregulate everything. Now, there are lots of business people I know in this audience, because I know a few people here and I know you run businesses, but you know ultimately, yes, we need to reduce regulatory burden for businesses where we can, but the reason your businesses aren't thriving isn't because of all this regulation. The principal reason your businesses aren't thriving is because people are not placing the orders with you at the moment. That is why they're not thriving. And then finally, what do they say? They say that, well, because middle and lower income families are struggling, the way to help them is, yeah, we're going to go and give a £100,000 tax cut to people earning millions of pounds, and that'll sort all of the rest of our problems out. This is what we are dealing with, and it is our people who are paying the price. When they cut education maintenance allowance from our young people, it was disproportionately black, Asian, and minority ethnic people and young people who suffered from that decision. You know? When they decided they were going to treble tuition fees, who was going to be put off from that level of debt? Because we don't deal with debt like that in these communities. It was black, minority, ethnic and Asian communities. Every step of the way, if you look at the very progressive things they have done, you look at the evidence, it has been our different diverse communities who pay the price more than most. And it doesn't get talked about in the media nearly enough, but it is an absolute fact. Now, the question is it good enough for all of us to say, you know, what they're doing is awful? Is it good enough? No, it isn't, because yes, we're all in politics, but we are actually in the future business. You know, we go and talk to our people, we talk to our constituents. They want to know, what are you going to do for my 15-year-old when they're 20? You know, after 5 years of Labour government, what are you going to be bequeathing to them? And when they're 25, what are they going to be doing? That is the question that we are going to need to be able to answer. And that's why we've got to make sure that we put in place the long-term reforms we need to put in place to reconfigure our economy so it is better serving our people. You know, the reality of the situation for people, on average, people are sustaining a £1,350 pay cut. That's an average, by the way, since 2010 under this government. So we have to reconfigure our economy so it is better delivering for people. So that, of course, means we've got to ensure that we see people going into higher education. It's what, I mean, people say we didn't achieve stuff in government. How dare they? How dare they? I saw the numbers of people going into higher education increase by 81% in my constituency. More people from our communities were going to university than ever before under the last Labour government. And we want to see that continue. But equally, we've got to ensure that we're providing opportunities for people who don't go to university. Because computer engineers, technicians, and the rest of them are as important, some might argue more important to our economy, if we're to grow those productive sectors that are going to deliver growth. And who is going to provide the jobs for them when they come out of education? In the main, it's going to be our small businesses. They provide 2/3 of private sector jobs. And the banking system simply is not serving them properly at the moment. Now, you saw old Clegg, Deputy Prime Minister Clegg said, oh, I'm going to do this big study into the way in which BME businesses in particular apparently are seen to be discriminated against by our banks. Do you know what? We haven't seen that report. He promised that over a year ago. Over a year ago. And do you know why they haven't published this report? We're not even sure it's been complete. Because, well, do you know, if only it had been done. It's sitting on a desk because two departments, DCLG and BIS and Treasury, can't agree amongst themselves who's going to have their label on the top of this report. Oh, people haven't got time to wait around for them to be arguing whose label is going to go on a report. Publish the thing. Publish the thing. So we can actually have a banking system that properly serves our people. That's what we need. So we need these long-term reforms as well. I talk about an industrial strategy, frankly. And what do I mean about that? You know, you looked in the early noughties when we were considering our sporting, well, it wasn't prowess at that time, and you looked at how Sport England and others said, right, we're not just going to focus on the kind of sexy track events where you see Olympia Christie, etc. We're going to focus on the sports which will deliver medals for the UK, for GB, for Team GB. They properly, strategically focused on those and look at the results that we saw in 2012. Now my view is that when we look across our industry, we need to be reflecting what is it that we do well, what does the UK excel at, which are the sectors that we've got that will feed the new demand coming from the emerging market economies. I talked about the African lines, but of course the BRIC economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China. I'm going to China next week, Chinese for labour, thanks to Sunny. We've got links everywhere. We've got links everywhere, but we've got to make sure that we grow our different sectors so that we can deliver the opportunities for our young people. Thank you very much.
What I want to ask you is, what kind of economy do you think we need to have? A liberal market economy or coordinated market economy, where what we have at the moment is liberal market economy, which is left to the market to decide unemployment, employment, and redistribution of wealth. Do you think we need to change that or combine it?
The issue is because of the recent threshold of financial requirement for families, 18,600 pounds. The most of the families, not only just migrant community, Asia, I mean Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, is also people in the UK or the safari below this rule. And because of this rule, they're not able to bring their family or children in over here. My question to you directly, what do you think on this regard? Because obviously I know you should be aware of this matter. And if the Labour Party go on the power in the next election, will the Labour Party look at this matter seriously, so that immigration policy is not only just divide or decide by the media, but the policy focus as well, considering the people's interest and also that community cohesion, because these things are lots of putting anger in the community as well, anxiety as well. But these things as well, putting our community apart from the politician.
Right, thank you.
Let's face it, the NHS and so many different institutions and facets in public health in this country would not be able to operate without the immigration that we have had. But if we want to be able to make the pro and positive case of immigration, we've got to make sure that the system has integrity. And I'm conscious I'm sitting a couple of meters away from the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, but Keith will be able to give you chapter and verse on the diabolical state of the immigration system in this country. So I think what we're saying is pro-immigration, yes, but proper managed migration. And at the end of the day, I mean, one of the reasons we had the points-based system in government was to ensure that to the extent that we were having immigration come in, that it was actually going to help fill skills gap and benefit us here. Now there's a lot of other complex issues that I could go into, but I just offer that by way of a kind of border doing for those as well, and Yvette will come out and give more detail about it.
If you happen to come to coalition in 2015, how are you going to help people to realize that dream? Because most of the young people are actually out of job. They don't know what to do, and they could go into businesses. They have the knowledge and they want to do that. So how are you going to help them to get that through?
Thank you. You can raise your hands in between and I will recognize.
Maureen Scott Douglas, West Bromwich East. My question is slightly different. It really, it's not directed at Chuku, but it's a general question. It's about when individuals are elected to Parliament or are in positions, and sometimes they lose that position. Now, looking at Dawn, we had an excellent MP who was doing very well in Parliament, but now she's not there. What can we do to ensure that once we have got our people in place, also thinking of Kamaljeet, we can keep them there?
I think Joe Kemenam, one of the BAME executive members. My question to you, Chuka, is I come from the background of providing capacity building to small, medium-sized businesses. And in the last 5 years, I have a clientele of over 500 businesses that I regularly support. And these are largely African-led businesses. And these groups have made so much money that no white organization would dream to pay them a fraction of what they currently earn. What has happened in the last 5 years to a lot of them is the activities of these credit agencies. I've asked you this question before, you may remember, and maybe you've had time to look into it and update us. The credit agencies, the way they operate, is in such an obtrusive way that we do not know what information they have about us. We blame the banks. The banks rely on them. Is there anything that that can be done to open them up a bit so that people can challenge the quality of information they have on businesses, because that is really taking the businesses down.
How are we going to help the young people realise the opportunities there are? It's a really good question that you asked there. I think we've got a problem with business support, the lack of it in our communities. And one of the things that the regional development agencies did deliver through Business Link and the business advisors, they weren't perfect by the way, was a level of business support everywhere that wasn't there before. Now, of course, the government decided to just tear that all up and destroy what we had, and now trying to recreate them in the form of the local enterprise partnerships. But I'm not sure they're going to have the capacity to deliver the mentoring and the support that you talk of that I think our young people would need in order to be able to set up businesses, particularly if you don't have a history of entrepreneurialism in your own family. This is one of the reasons why we're looking very seriously, and I think that there is a very strong argument for the establishment of the UK equivalent of what they have in the US as Small Business Administration. The Small Business Administration in the US particularly has a focus on driving a small business agenda across the federal government, but also providing that support in all the different states too, and has certain targets. Now, I don't think we could do that here. It's a different situation in the US, but in respect of different diverse communities and women in particular. So I think that is something that we're looking at. Andrew Adonis from my team is doing a review into the machinery of government and the kind of support that we provide to people for that. Maureen, how do we ensure that we keep our people in place? Well, the first thing is to say this: support them, okay? That, support. One of the criticisms that has often been levelled against people who are in leadership positions in the Labour Party is that people say, oh, well, you don't represent us. We don't hear you talking about our issues. Now, there's two things I'd say about that. First of all, I'm the Shadow Business Secretary, and I am the Shadow Business Secretary for all different businesses, regardless of their background. And that's why I'm in the position that I'm in. I am not the Shadow Business Secretary for, say, black businesses. And I think people need to understand that. That doesn't mean that I haven't got my eye on issues and I'm not focused on issues that are affecting the black community. Of course I have. But just because you don't see us necessarily talking about it in the media as much as the other issues which I have primary responsibility for, that doesn't mean it isn't at the forefront of our minds. That's the first thing. The second thing is that informally and behind the scenes, of course, those of us in leadership positions in the Labour Party are pushing and ensuring that the different communities are properly represented in our policy making. Of course we do that, and of course colleagues come and talk to us about it. So Andy Burnham did a very important speech to Black Mental Health UK. He sat down with me. I mean, I don't know if any people were there, but it was an excellent speech. He sat down with me and talked to me, and I talked to him about it, the experience of my constituency and my take on what we need to do to ensure that we address the inequalities in our mental health system. Sadiq gets consulted all the time, obviously has a responsibility for it, but in relation to some of the criminal justice issues, where we've got over-representation of our people going through the criminal justice system.
Hereafter was a closed-door workshop on activist training and how to get selected for offices. John Nelson, Vice Chair, BAME Labour, made a closing remarks.
We'll try and run some courses along that line to enable people for selection processing, whatever capacity you decide to go into, whether it's local government, whether it's as an MP, whether to become a peer or whatever. Keith has just given us that information, and it's a wealth of information that a lot of us doesn't know about. And one of the things that Keith and others we can tap into is things that we don't know about. We can ask them. Because one of the things we're not very good at is asking the questions to find out where we can go, what it is we can do, and how we can progress. So we need to use that as our building block. So I want to say to Keith, thank you very much for this.
On that note, it was time to network and share thoughts about the conference.
I would like to ask, for those who doesn't know who BAME is all about, what is BAME?
BAME stands for Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnic Forum. It's a forum where the African Caribbean and Asian and other minorities get together and have their forum where they can debate policy. They have a member on the executive, and they're integral in terms of running the Labour Party. It was when I became an MP in 2005 It was originally known as the Black Socialist Society, and it was moribund. It didn't exist. And one of my promises to people in the community, real stalwarts and activists, was that if I became elected as the MP, that I would relaunch the Black Socialist Society. And I did that. I relaunched the Black Socialist Society in 2006, and then they had a new constitution later on, I think in 2006, 2007, and they changed the name to BAME, BAME.
So like, what's the benefit of being a BAME member?
The benefit of being a BAME member is that you actually get into positions in the Labour Party that you might not get into through your normal routes, through your GCs, because obviously they're very much dominated by the white members, most of the structures.
History has told us, and as I said today, 68% of the last ballots and the people that voted for Labour were 68% of the community, and they were all married and got Labour in the last time, and the people that still voted for Labour today, majority are 68%. And if we have the BAME that is 68% voting for Labour, we can see those 68% in BAME conferences and activities around the UK, then there's more work to be done. It's not that they're not doing well as a women, but it's just more like we need to find a way of reaching the hard-to-reach people and bringing them on board to be these places like this. And so we could have a better representation in the parliament, and we have a community that is ruled, and the people ruling, they reflect the community that they rule.
I took this opportunity to come and be aware of what BAME offers their members. That is the reason why I came here. So it's my first time.
So what's your rating? How would you like to see it?
It is very beneficial. A lot of people didn't turn up. I would have loved to see a lot of our members, the BAME members, turning up. We have a lot of BAME members in Labour. We have a lot of Black, Asian, ethnic minority people in Labour. But we haven't seen them turning up for this meeting. The meeting is very beneficial, especially the workshop that I attended has benefited me a lot. As a future candidate, I'm going to say that I'm not very much aware of how the local council works. But the workshop has actually given me a template of how to go about talking about issues that I'm very passionate about. So I'm really happy that I came to this.
To engage myself in politics. This is my future aspirations, and then time will say what to do, what not to do. At least I need to know the Labour Party, I need to know the local area, I need to know how Labour Party works in the local area, mainstream.
So what would you now like to say about Labour Party?
The Labour Party, many things we know from the media, from our involvement, that yes, the Labour Party can deliver. Labour Party is working with the issues that involve with the British, Black, Asian, minority ethnic. So for example, the racial issue, geo-stud issues, education issues, school dropping out, so many issues we can deal with. We need to know first what the Labour Party is delivering.
We are able to tell them to give us what we want, and they will do it. Because if they don't do it, we will ask our members not to vote for them, and they will be out of office. But the key thing is that Nigerians will tell you they are not into politics. It's a lie. If you say you're not into politics, I will challenge you to cross the road when the light is red, and see what happens to you. Because the banana you eat is politics, fish is politics, your council tax, somebody decides on it, the amount of national insurance they come from you, the poll tax, the parking ticket. How can you sit back? Others are making decisions on your money, and you sit back and say you are big and great, you're intellectual, you're this. Because you're making money, and a very little meaty person is deciding what you do and what you don't do. Come out, join Nigerians for Labour. Let's collectively go to MPs and say we need ABC, and we need it delivered in 6 months. That's what we are about. And the moment